Blog Talk Radio.
Hello. Welcome to Hidden Human Story Radio with your host, Rita Jean Moran. Today is Sunday, October 27th, 2013, and I am your host, Rita Jean Moran. Today I'm going to talk about hauntings and strange creatures since we are a few days away from Halloween, and this is the time. But before I get into today's show, I want to talk about a few things. The last show I did, I just want to apologize. At the end, I tried to play Mark Twain's, I think it was called The Stranger, and it didn't come out audio-wise. And I did give you an idea where you could find it on YouTube, so I apologize for that. Also, I want to note, I put my radio shows out on my YouTube channel, which is the Library Kids 7. And I actually got dinged by YouTube for that last show, even though you couldn't hear what was being said for this mysterious stranger from another YouTube video. They cited me as a copyright violation, which it isn't, because I claim fair usage, Title 17, Section 107, on any of the material that I'm trying to make a commentary on. And I just think as I move into waters that are perhaps a little more controversial, I'm going to get a little bit more of that in the future. So I would take a look and listen while it's still around. And as I've said before, I have several books out. I'm on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I have books for children, the Library Kids, and my Hidden Human Story series for a more mature audience. I have a couple blogs. I have several Facebook pages. And you can either go to my Library Kids Facebook or my Rita J. Moran Facebook and just hit the follow. And you can also follow this radio show. Now, I've been very busy over the last month working on a new book. It's going to be called The Crow-Eyed Chronicles, and I'm working on the last bit of editing, and it's going to have some excellent information in there. So you'll want to check that out. I'll let you know the next show. The next show I do will probably be on The Crow-Eyed Chronicles, but I'll let you know when it's out. It's got some fabulous information. I've been working on some art projects, which I'll get into and tell you about at a later time, and some YouTube videos, and a whole lot of research. So also go to my YouTube channel, by the way, because I am doing some videos on mythology and symbolism and how all of it connects together. I just did a video on Zeus and the pomegranate. And I basically take a real, a pomegranate and open it up and break down all of the symbolism and compare it to the tarot cards and show you how all of these things in your world or this matrix, whatever you want to call it, are connected. And the majority of it all goes back to this family. All right, so now on to the show. First of all, Halloween is generally thought of as a holiday for dressing up and collecting candy in America. But it's really based on an old pagan holiday, particularly a Celtic one, called Samhain. Now, some people pronounce it Samhain. I've seen Samhain. It's Samhain. And there's generally 8 holidays on a Celtic pagan and Nordic calendar, which divides up the year. And Samhain is the end of the harvest season and the end of the year. It represents the split between the half of the year that has the most light and the other half of the year that has the least amount of light. Samhain is an old Celtic celebration, as I've said, and it is celebrated with bonfires and food. It is also said that this is the time of the year when the veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead, or the unseen world, is at its thinnest. Okay, what causes a haunting, and what is a haunting? Well, we live in the three-dimensional world, or the physical world, and we consider ourselves alive. We have to have food and water and liquids for sustenance and certain temperature to maintain our bodies, and then all of the things that go with the comforts of life and social contact. But what happens to you when you are dead? And there are some people that don't think anything. They just figure you're gone and there's nothing else. And then there's quite a few people that believe that you have something called a soul or spirit that exists after your physical body is done. And it is this essence of you that is considered immortal. And there are, in the Hindu and Buddhist religion, they believe that soul also inhabits various bodies throughout time, because this is a journey or an experience. And, you could be born a man, a woman, different race, whatever. Not too many people believe you could be reincarnated into an animal, but I don't know. But basically, it's you after death, your spirit, your soul. And if there is such a thing as a soul or spirit, which I do believe there is, and physics says that you cannot destroy energy, it only becomes transformed, why would you just sit around for eternity? Now, the Christian or Abrahamic religion, I think Islam also believes there's like a heaven, paradise, or a hell. Catholics believe there's also an in-between called purgatory, where you have to make up for some mediocre sins you did, but it wasn't bad enough to send you to hell. And quite frankly, I don't really understand if Jewish people think that you have a soul after death. I've heard multiple things, like some of them believe this is it, and then there's some that believe that they're the only ones that have a soul and nobody else does, and I don't know, that's kind of confusing to me. And then you get into Jewish mysticism, but anyway, basically, the whole idea of a haunting typically involves humans, although sometimes it can involve the spirits of animals and also the spirits of non-humans, allegedly, that don't have a physical body anymore, but they have not moved on to either somewhere else or a new physical body, and they stay in an area. Now, what causes a haunting? Usually a very tragic event, a horrific event, such as a murder, or somebody's just plain attached to the area, and their spirit is just not ready to move on to whatever is in their future. It's not time yet. Perhaps it's not time for them to reincarnate yet. So they're hanging out in the astral plane, waiting for the time for them to come back in. And so they're in the invisible world, and I would call that the world of energy. They don't have eyes and ears, but they certainly can perceive what is going on, and at some point communicate to the living or modify the environment to make their presence known. And a lot of times with the new technology of cameras and video, some of their essence can be caught on film or in audio with EVP. So EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. So a haunting can be if you believe in it, a soul or spirit of a person that has either been murdered or had a tragic situation, and they're attached to a land or a place or an object, or they're just not ready to move on, and they're attached to a land or a place or an object. Now, another type of haunting can be an imprint of a traumatic or horrific event, where basically it's just a recording of what had happened. It's not the actual spirit. It's just showing the same event over and over and over again. And I think there is something to that. You know, the earth could be, have certain extremely, horrific or tragic or emotional events recorded within its grid. I'm kind of open to that possibility. There's also the hauntings of animals that come around and check on, their owners and hang out with the owners until it's time for them to move on. So I've heard of that. And then there's the non-human type of hauntings, poltergeists, demons, bizarre creatures. Now, I have read something in an Alice Bailey's book where she mentioned that if you are a dark magician, what you're basically dealing with is not like a god or goddess or a person. You're just dealing with another dark individual on the astral plane when you connect up with them. And generally, when people are messing around and playing with Ouija boards, or they're trying to invoke or evoke spirits, playing like they're a Satanist or a witch or what, I don't even know what you would call it. I would take that back, because those people actually have I guess I would say they have some kind of a structure to it. But when people play around, like they're going to invoke a spirit, like, whatever, and or they start trying to do spells, and they don't really understand what they're doing, and they don't know how to properly, if that is even such a thing, open and close a circle, so to say. They always seem to end up in trouble, and they get something more than they bargained for, and whatever it is that they bring in, like, won't leave them alone and other people alone. Sometimes they'll even follow them when they move from place to place. And they basically did it themselves. They're the ones who were messing around, calling in something that they had no idea what they were calling in. So, and I've seen some stories, like one guy was, thought he was going to be, he was going to start calling in certain entities. And he went and got a book, and he started playing around, and then, he got a little bit of response, and then he lost, interest, and then he didn't do things properly. He didn't even follow whatever these rituals are that are in agreement with whatever these entities are. And things started to get real bad for him. And whatever this entity was, it would start to wait till he was at his weakest moment, such as sleeping, and would wake him up and slap him around in the bed and physically abuse him. Turn on the radio, all kind of psychological attacks, and just go at the guy constantly. And he couldn't figure out how to get rid of it, and he had to call in a priest or whatever it was, a professional who understands how to get rid of this stuff or close it out and end it. But that was just another example of playing around with something you shouldn't be playing around with, because you don't know who you're calling up. It's unless you're gifted enough to understand what you're seeing or what the energy is, you're not going to know. You don't know what you're calling up. So I don't know what these demons are. I don't know if they are, just nasty people that have passed on. I don't know if there's some other kind of life form. I really don't know, because I don't play around with this, stuff. I don't want any part of it. But there's also talk about these reptoids and gray aliens also being demons, and that some of them are still in physical bodies in under the ground or in the center of the earth. And that's an interesting subject. I'll get into that a little bit later in the show of what my thoughts are on that. But some people think that they're actually channeling these reptilian or gray alien entities, and that's what the demon is, and that they despise humans. But I wouldn't mess around with that stuff. I mean, there are people that are called to this, whether they want it or not, and that is the path that has been given to them, and they have to learn the skills of how to deal with this and take care of problems or help people. And I don't think they mess around. I think they just do what they have to do to take care of things. But if you mess around, you may get something you weren't hoping for. Let's just put it that way, and you'll get taught a lesson. There's a lot of people that I know, the magician and the sorcerers, think that they have control over these entities when they call them up. But I'm just going to propose this question to you. You are in a body, and it has physical needs, so you are at times open to weak periods. If you don't get food or water, you're weak. If you're doing drugs or alcohol, you have a weak spot. If you're sleeping, you are in a weak spot. If you haven't had sleep or you're ill, you have a weak spot. And when you're playing around with this stuff, they look for an opening for your weakest time. And you're dealing with entities that have been around for who knows how long and have whatever intelligence. And these entities don't have the physical requirements that you do in your body. So they don't have to sleep. And they're just energy units, so to say, waiting for the right time to teach you a lesson. And so when you think you have all of this control and all that, maybe the fact is you don't. Maybe what this, maybe there's been established procedures for how you approach and the conversation, and there's a reason for that. And if you come in disrespectively and that you're going to do this and that, I think eventually you're going to get taught a lesson. So that's just something to think about. And, basically that can cause a haunting. You can have a real negative energy that was brought in because of things that people were doing. They were doing some despicable rituals that could bring it in. Or you can have a very angry spirit that, got messed over in life, and he's taking it out on descendants of whoever did it to him or her, or, whoever's still alive. So that can cause a haunting as well. So you have either, the person is died tragically, or they were attached, or it's not time. You could have a recording of some kind of a event that was very, strong with emotion, or you can have some kind of a dark entity that was brought in because people were messing around with things they shouldn't have been. So generally, those three things are the main things that could cause a haunting. Now, okay, I want to talk about the Chicagoland area because that's where I'm from. And there's quite a bit of hauntings in this area. And I'm going to talk about, I just did a YouTube video on the hauntings over on Cuba Road, Rainbow Road, and White Cemetery. These are hot spots, and it's up in the Barrington area. I just, like I said, went out and researched the whole thing and put a YouTube video out. And there are supposed to be several white orbs seen in coming out of White Cemetery all the time. Now, when I went and I took photographs, I did catch a couple of white orbs on the tombstones. So if you look at my video, and also a white ball when I was leaving through the fence, I point that out in the video. And the other thing that goes on Cuba Road is there's a lot of talk about an old car from the 20s or 30s that is seen speeding away and then it disappears. There's also an older woman that is a hitchhiker on Cuba Road. And supposedly there's all kind of rumors that there was a mental institution on Rainbow Road and a murder. So all of this is such a hot spot. So I had to go out and I had to investigate this area. And here is what I found out. Well, first of all, I found out that in the 1920s and 30s, this Lake County area was a hot spot for the Prohibition gangsters. And Bugs Moran, no relation that I know of, other than way, way, way back to the Morans, but he was at war with the Capone gang, or Al Capone. And the Valentine's Massacre, had happened, and some of Bugs Moran's people were killed. And in retaliation, there was a massacre that was carried out in Fox Lake. And it was some of the Capone gang that was killed because of the Valentine's Massacre. But that occurred in an inn that's in Fox Lake, which is kind of in the area, but it really isn't near White Cemetery, and it's not off of Cuba Road or Rainbow Road. So I went and I wanted to see if any of the people that were killed at that, Fox Lake Massacre were buried in that White Cemetery. And I did not find anybody from that massacre that I could see that was buried there. However, here is what I found. And that cemetery, White Cemetery, is very old. There are people that were born in the 1700s, died in the 1700s, all the way till today that are buried. So you have the whole history of America in that cemetery. There are Civil War soldiers that were killed, people that died of diseases in the 1800s, 1700s. There are people that were in World War I, World War II. They're in there. There was a guy that was a horse jockey in there. He's buried. There was a guy that was an architect, and he had a very beautiful Chinese guardian lion as his gravestone. Very fascinating. So in my video on YouTube, check it out. Go to my YouTube, The Library Kids 7. You will see all of the graves that I went through. And, we have to be thankful for modern medicine. I'm going to tell you, when I went through, and you'll see this in a lot of older cemeteries, the kids would die from illness. There's a lot of graves with the parents that outlived their children. The children would die as a baby, die as like a 10-year-old. It was very common to lose your children to illnesses. Unlike today, we have antibiotics and, vaccines, to a certain degree, although that's a subject for another day. But antibiotics and the IV bag have saved millions upon millions of lives. Even though we might have some issues right now with the antibiotics and the antibiotic-resistant viruses, people that talk like that, you need to go through some history and understand how easy and how common it was that people would die from bacterial infections, and what a horrible death it is. So, maybe we need to develop some other things, like I've heard of, I think they're called macrophages, which are viruses that attack bacteria, or some alternative medicine for some of these issues that are coming up. But antibiotics has been like a godsend, as well as the IV bag, because a lot of people a lot of these children, when they had horrible fevers, would dehydrate very quickly and die. So the IV bag and the antibiotic have really saved a lot of children and people that would have died, before they reached the age of 12. So that is what is in that cemetery. And as I said, I did catch a few white orbs and some white lights off of some of the the tombstones when I went in there. Now, the biggest thing that I found out was something called the Battle of Barrington. And the Battle of Barrington involved Babyface Nelson and the FBI. And there was a shootout in that whole area. They started out, Babyface Nelson had the reputation of the gangster that killed the most FBI agents. So he was really hated. And he had killed, an agent, but they were after him, and he knew he was being followed. So he was doing some turnarounds on 14, and he probably came back up on Cuba Road and did another turnaround. But there were a lot of shots fired, and the cars... Babyface's car went off the road, and the FBI's car as well. And somehow, through the gunfighting and all of that, they were able to get into the FBI car, that was Nelson, and speed away after Babyface Nelson had been shot. Now, he died subsequently after that. His wife was with him and another guy. There was a plaque put in the Barrington Park District, and it is for the Battle of Barrington. It happened in 1934, so there's your old-time cars. And, it claimed the lives of 2 FBI agents and, like I said, resulted in the death of the Chicago gangster Babyface Nelson. So I think that pretty much explains what is going on Cuba Road because of the old-time car and speeding and disappearing. Now, whether that's a spirit or it's a recording of what happened, I don't know. I'm going to tend to go in the direction that is a recording by the earth of what happened, because people were killed, the emotions were high, the whole time, the situation. I think that was recorded somehow in the grid of the earth. Now, I could be wrong. It could be one of the spirits, who was killed, reenacting what happened to them. That's a possibility as well. I'd have to, sit there night after night until I actually saw the haunted car come down and see what I can figure out. But for now, I would attribute that speeding and disappearing car to the Battle of the Barrington. Battle of Barrington. The Rainbow Road issue is an interesting one. I went there. The house is no longer there. What I found was there's several stories going on with that. There's talk that there was a doctor who worked in the Elgin State Mental Institution, and there are a lot of things that went on, lobotomies and just nasty kind of, abuse of the patients. And you never know what followed that guy home. The other thing is there's talk that there was a murder of a family out there as well. So we don't know who this woman is that's a hitchhiker walking up and down Cuba Road and into Rainbow Road, but I could not find out with surety what went on in that area. If I do find that out, I'll put some kind of video out on YouTube later. So that is a very famous hot spot up here in the northwest suburbs. The whole Chicagoland is haunted, has various hot spots. And a while back, I actually went on a tour with a ghost hunter named Richard Crow. He is now passed. And we basically went all over the place. He pointed out, an alley where Dillinger was shot. There, that's haunted. There's bars that are haunted. We went to a couple Irish pubs. Another famous one is the Resurrection Mary Cemetery on Archer Avenue down there in. It's not Lamont. I mean, part of it is Lamont, but it's in that area, and the other part of it I think is Bridgeview, but that whole Archer Avenue, and I actually grew up in that area, by the way, and I'm going to get into some real juicy stories here in a minute about what I experienced growing up, but there's a big Catholic cemetery down on Archer Avenue, and there's a dance hall, the Willowbrook dance hall. And the story is in the 1930s, a girl met her boyfriend at a dance, and they had a fight, and she left and got in a horrific car accident and died. And so she was buried I don't think she was buried in that Resurrection Cemetery. It was a Polish girl from what my research has shown, but she allegedly, in her beautiful white dress, walks up and down Archer Avenue hitchhiking. She'll ask men when they pick her up, to take her to the ball, or the Willowbrook Ball, or she'll disappear in the car, or she'll ask them to drive her home in Chicago. And when they do, and they get to the address, she's gone. Now, in that cemetery, there's talk that she's in there, and people have supposedly seen her trying to pry open the gates of the cemetery, the bars on it, and there were burn marks of finger marks on those bars that were left. Well, there were finger marks left, and I guess the people that maintained the cemetery tried to burn them out or cover it up. But that cemetery, I've been in there, and the cops watch it all the time because everybody wants to go in there and see what they can see at night. So you can't even, don't even waste your time going there at night because you'll probably get arrested or harassed. But unless you got a permit or something, but I think they lock it up at night. But it has all kind of mausoleums. It's very old too. Now there's another cemetery, two cemeteries in Hillside, Queen of Heaven and Our Lady of Mount Carmel. Oh man, lots of stories there. Al Capone is buried in, I think, the Queen of Heaven. I have a lot of family buried there, but there's a lot of Italians there, a lot of Irish. And I went there, and on my blog, I did a whole, on my RitaGMoran.blogspot.com, I did a whole story on Queen of Heaven and Mount Carmel Cemetery, because there are so many things going on there. The Queen of Heaven Cemetery is the site of the Virgin Mary sightings. And I went over to that area. I didn't see anything. They have a cross and everything. I didn't see anything abnormal when I went to do some research on it. There's a story of a bride. She died young. I think she was ill. And she died, and they buried her in her wedding dress. And I was out there with my aunt a while ago, the first time I went out there, and she was telling me the story. And at that time, well, let me finish the story. She, when she was buried in her wedding dress, the father kept having dreams about his daughter, and it kind of drove him crazy, and so he requested to make sure she wasn't still alive in that coffin, and they dug up the coffin and found out that her body never decayed, but she was dead. So that kind of like answered his question of what was going on in his dreams. So, and yeah, I want to make sure she's not in a coma or something, but she'd suffocate, probably being buried. But so she's there, and that's supposed to be a haunted site. Like I said, Capone is buried there. A lot of other gangsters. There's a lot of old mausoleums, a lot of Irish, a lot of Italian people in both of those cemeteries. Now, they have above-ground mausoleums, and I went into the building. There's 4 floors, and it has so much symbolism in those stained glass windows. I had to take pictures. So if you have time, go to my blog, find that article about Queen of Heaven, and just take a look at what they put in those stained glass windows. On these above-ground mausoleums, they have like a Catholic saint, and then behind it a beautiful stained glass window, but even on the walls, like they were painting a phoenix, or other symbols. Everything is symbolic in that mausoleum. It's mind-blowing. So I was in there. I was, and as usual, I go with people, but I end up going. I have to go by myself because either somebody doesn't want to go with me or they don't feel like it. So I had to go to all these floors by myself and taking pictures, and I went to the basement, and I felt okay. The main floor I felt okay. I went to the second floor, and I think that's the one they have the Virgin Mary lifelike, human-sized statue, and I just felt so creeped out, like somebody was in there and very angry and just didn't want me there. So I had to leave. And I went up on the third floor, and I felt okay, but that second floor just creeped me out. So like I said, go to my blog, and I wouldn't take any pictures on that second floor. It was just, I had to get out of there. But you can go and see what I did take, and like I said, the symbology is amazing in that building. So those two cemeteries are very haunted. They have a lot of activity in Hillside. They're very old, famous people, a lot of history. Okay, so we covered that. Okay, I'm going to tell you. Before we get into the Grimes sisters, I grew up in that area where the bodies were found, and the guy who found the Grimes sisters was Mr. Prescott. He was my neighbor, and the land that I grew up on was farm and forest land, and it was rural. I mean, I would find arrowheads in the backyard. That's how rural it was. The deer from Argonne Lab would come over. Every kind of wildlife you can imagine. To a certain point, the land wasn't cleared. It was solid forest, and it was hard to walk through. And there was a lot between myself, or my home, and Mr. Prescott's, and that was a solid forest. And across from me was a farm, and the road was gravel. I mean, we didn't have blacktop or concrete roads back then. It was gravel. And so I could always hear when cars would come, and I didn't feel comfortable. In the woods I felt fine, like I belonged. But when people would come in, it was the people that made me nervous in that area, and I could hear them coming down the road with their car because I could hear the gravel. And I would hide. I'd either climb up in a tree, or I'd hide on the ground. I'd blend in with the grass, or I'd hide behind something. The other thing is, when you're in the woods, and you have a lot of land, and it's rural. First of all, the police don't come out because you're unincorporated. So most of the people there had shotguns or guns, and they would deal with you if you were a problem. And you shouldn't come around. But people were very disrespectful, and they would trespass all the time, and you never knew what who these people were. They were weirdos. They come in and walk on your property, and just cut through, or they would try and rob your house. Our house was robbed twice. So the woods is beautiful. Nature is beautiful. But the problem when you're in a very rural area, there's a lot of criminals and weirdos that consider it an opportunity. So that is why I am pro-gun. There is definitely a need for people when they're in rural areas to be able to protect themselves. But basically, other than the trespassers and weirdos that would occasionally come onto your land, that area was magical. And I felt very safe in not only my property that I grew up on, but I would go down the gravel road and I'd find like a place in the farm I'd love to go look. I'd find a little place that I used to imagine there were little elves with me, and yeah, that sounds weird, but it was like a little part in between the trees, and I would sit on there and just relax. And then there were always creeks. I had my brother with me at times. We'd go and we'd look at the creek, and yeah, I probably shouldn't have went on other people's land, but it was all forest. And or like I said, I was sitting on the side of the road with this little opening, or a farm. But there is something very strange about the one plot of land between me and Mr. Prescott, and I'll get into this in a minute. But like I said, I have one memory when I was in the woods. I heard this. There were a lot of old trees. I heard this crack above me, and something, just in my mind was like, get up and move. And at that point, a big branch fell down exactly right where I was sitting. So I didn't, after that I was very careful. You have to be very careful with old trees. But I still felt safe, in those woods. So basically, I was very comfortable with nature. It was the people that I didn't know who were coming in. Or, I knew the neighbors, all the neighbors knew each other, and whatever few neighbors there were. But something was strange about the lot next to me. And to this day, I don't know what it was, but there's something wrong there. But anyway, and like I said, periodically I would see cars parked there for all day, and they'd have the shaded windows, and who knows what they were doing. But anyway, let's get back to Mr. Prescott. He was my neighbor. He was there before I was even born. And these Grimes sisters were two little girls that were abducted and hideously murdered in a disgusting way in the 1950s. And then their naked bodies, and it happened around Christmas time, and their naked bodies were dumped on the German Church Road on the corner. And unfortunately, my neighbor was the one who was driving home from, I think, work or on his way to get groceries. He was the one who saw them when he drove by, and he didn't know. He thought they were mannequins. And he went back and he got his wife because he didn't want to go and look at it, by himself. And he brought her back, Marie, and they both looked, and sure enough, it was the Grimes sisters. So they called the police, and the police came out. And it was in January that they were found. And what I heard from my parents, because this all happened before I was even born, it happened before my parents even, moved out there and built a ranch house. I heard that the police thought maybe he had some involvement in it, and they grilled him really hard, and it really affected the guy mentally. Now, he had nothing to do with it, and I know that for a fact. The guy had nothing to do with it. He was just the unfortunate person that found the bodies. So that area today is, all of the land in that area was bought up, and very expensive homes were put on the properties. And even the lot that was between myself and the Prescotts has a house on it. But there's one patch that still has the foresty area, and that's the creepy area. And I don't know why, but there's something wrong there. But everything in that area has $1 million homes or $500,000 homes. There were a lot of supposed mafia-type people building homes in there, doctors, and there were a lot of horse ranches. There were a lot of people that had horses out there at that time. But the one area where the little girls, the Grimes sisters, where their bodies were dumped, nobody has ever bought that property. And there was a house on there, and that house burnt down. So now all that's left is some concrete from the old foundation. There's nothing left there except the land. And they have a fence, and it's keep out, private property. That property is haunted, for sure. And I took some pictures. I went out and I was researching. I did find some strange things in my pictures. Any of this time, like some of these gruesome things, especially with children, I don't want to get too much into it. I think that there's still relatives that are alive from these girls. I know the mom
she died at Broken Heart years ago. But I don't know if they had sisters or brothers or a father that's still alive. But this case was never solved, and I really hope that the police open this case again. They have linked possibly the murder and what happened to the Schuster-Peterson boys, which was done by the Silas Jane gang, to this, Grimes sisters. And I kind of tend to agree with that. The whole area had horses all over the place. And Silas Jane, he was a scumbag. And he was into horses. He was ripping off rich people, selling them, these horses that weren't what he said they were, and he was burning down stables to collect insurance money, and he was murdering people, and the stories are that he was also raping little girls, and if if the parents found out, he threatened to say that they were sluts, and they did it willingly, and he was going to wreck their reputation. So a lot of the parents just let it be, but there were some disappearances of some Indiana girls, too, I think, that they kind of thought he had something to do with as well. Now, in the Silas Jane gang, he had several people and, that were criminals, and he was supposedly bribing some of the cops. And there may have been some police involvement covering up a lot of his crimes. So if I were a police and I had some time, I would open up this closed file and I would start looking I would start to look into certain things in that area, and supposedly there's some clothes that were found from these girls or something. I don't know if there was any DNA evidence. And where are these articles? Does anybody have them anymore? Has anybody tried to do any DNA tests? I don't know. But with everything going on, and they're still like for Gacy, they're still figuring out a few victims who they were through DNA. And some of the victims, there's like 4 victims of John Wayne Gacy they never identified. But I would open this up again. I think it's worth looking into, and I think it's worth looking at this Silas Jane gang or whatever the heck, even if see if there's any of these articles left for these girls and start comparing it. Now, like I said, what it did to my neighbor, and I want to be very careful of what I say here because I don't want to, from what I understand, Mr. Leonard Prescott has passed away, but I think his wife is still alive, and so are his kids. But it affected him really bad. And when my brother and I used to ride our bikes down the road, he would make like strange noises to scare us because what I was told by my parents is he didn't want us leaving our property. He was afraid, he didn't want us wandering around by ourselves. So he would, and I remember, I think too, he talked to me when I was a kid, told me, there's weirdos, don't be riding around your bike, with your bike by yourself. And that's how bad it affected him, and as a child, you don't understand these things, but as an adult, I can look back and see, I could put the whole picture together. Now, on these Grimes sisters, I definitely think that area is haunted. Nobody has bought that property that their bodies were dumped on, and there are stories that people see a dark green or black car screeching away from that area, and then it disappears after they hear some thuds, like something being thrown out. That, too, like the Barrington case, could be a recording of what happened. And like I said, if I were the police, I would go get a good psychic who works on the quiet, if you have to, and get some more information and see if whatever articles are left and if there's any DNA testing that could be done. Now, what I understood about the Grimes sisters is they were really into Elvis Presley, and there were a couple other suspects like Benny Bedwell and Max Fleeg and Walter Kranz and like I said, Silas Jane. Those were the four main ones. And this Walter Kranz, that was like a 53-year-old guy. And what happened was he dreamt about the bodies of the girls, and he thought that they were at Santa Fe Park. That used to be an old racetrack, and it was right in that area. So he told the police that he had psychic powers, and he got taken in and questioned, and they thought they thought for a while he was the one who did it, but he didn't. He was cleared. So that left Silas Jane and this Max Flagg, who was a 17-year-old, and he took a polygraph and failed it. And then he confessed to kidnapping the girls, but at the time it was illegal to perform the polygraph test on a minor. That guy could still be alive today. So cops, go get your DNA, and if this guy did it, start looking. Benny Bedwell was the other one. He was a 25-year-old guy. He's probably still alive today. Illiterate drifter from Tennessee who resembled Elvis Presley. And there are people that said that they saw him with the two girls. There's a couple things I find interesting. I've seen a couple articles online that the girls were drugged. Now they were kidnapped around Christmas time, and they weren't found till like a couple weeks later. Let's see. On December 28th, 1956, Barbara, age 15, Patricia, age 13, left their house and went to the theater, and then that's when they disappeared. And then on January, on January 22nd, that's when Leonard Prescott found the bodies. So, these girls were gone for like 3 weeks. And I don't know, I've seen all kind of stuff online that they were drugged. There was drugs found, like something in their bodies. I don't know. And who do you believe? This is from the 1950s. But like I said, with all of the technology today, a good detective should be able to get in there and find out what's left and do some DNA testing. And if any of these guys are still around, you could go find out something. Or even dig up the bodies if they're dead, if you find some DNA. Okay, so that area is definitely haunted. And a couple of things, like I said, when I was a teenager, there was another lady who was murdered, and her naked body was dumped at the end of the street. And I have no idea what happened or who she was. I just heard she came from Summit. So until, that area was built up, it was, like I said, very foresty, and, criminals tended to take advantage of that. It tends to draw that kind of element, nature, a very beautiful nature area that's quiet and remote tends to draw these psychos, which is unfortunate. But and there's a lot of other stories of that area I really don't want to get into. I want to move on to some other things, but a lot of hauntings in that area. I personally think some of that land is cursed for some of the things that went on. I think there's a lot of other things in the past. But anyway, moving on to some of the other things. Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. That one is, I believe, in Midlothian, very haunted. There's said to be a woman with a baby that appears. A lot of guys that were poor were buried there. That one is very famous for white mists and white orbs that appear and caught on a lot of film. I haven't been out there. Someday I'd like to get out there and do some research. I've been to a lot of these places I've just talked about. Jane Addams' Hull House, I've been there.
Supposedly, that was one of those ones that a woman had too many kids and cursed the last baby she had and said, may it be a devil. And it came out and it was deformed and allegedly flew away. Jane Addams' Hull House is on the campus of University of Illinois at Chicago and is said to definitely be haunted. I've been there too. Okay, let's see if I've missed any of the other ones. There's a lot of places in the Chicagoland area. I don't want to get into too much of it, but there's been some really gruesome things like out in Gurney and just other places. And they're pretty horrific. I've just found out about some other guy, too. Oh, my goodness. I can't remember the guy's name. This guy, at the turn of the 20th century, was killing a lot of people. And he was hiding their bodies and disposing of them in his house. The guy was really rich. And I guess Great America is doing some kind of... I think it's Great America, story on the guy. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Or is it Rosemont? Let's see. Basically, the guy was just a sicko. And he was filthy rich, so he could hide what he was doing. And he was running all of these... yeah, here it is. Okay. He was running all these scams of these single women... where he would like hire them to work for him, and then he would put an insurance policy, and then he'd like kill them, and then he would sell their body parts to like doctors, as some kind of a medical thing. And the guy is said to have killed over like 400 people. And I think he's called Devil of the White City. Okay, it's a Rosemont haunted house. And I think the guy's name is Hunt. Let me see if I can find that real quick. But the guy got away with it for a long time. And they're basically, like I said, doing some kind of Devil in the White City. It was a book written by Eric Larson. Yeah, they're basically doing, Dr. H.H. Holmes. That's the guy. Okay, he was the architect. Let's see. Okay, no, he was not. He was a doctor during the 1893 World's Fair. Okay, so he would lure, like I said, his victims to their death in what they called the murder castle. And no one suspected him for quite a while because he was rich and he was a good, like a true psychopath. He can con people. And he was one of the worst, American serial killers. So, and he operated out of Chicago. And he had a hotel, which it just, I guess he built it by himself with the specific idea of all these murders that he was going to do. He confessed to 27 murders, but some count as high as 200. But he disposed of a lot of these bodies, so no one, it was mostly like women who were single and, looking for a job to survive, and he just preyed on that. And then, like I said, he would just figure out all these, ways to scam, and insurance policy and different business names. No one figured it out. So that area, I'm sure, is very haunted, and I'm sure a lot of those victims may be walking around. That's out of Chicago. But that's another famous one. So if we think that this phenomenon of the serial killer is something new and due to, things going on in today's society, it isn't. There's a long history of these psychopaths
that really caused a lot of problems, on this earth. But it doesn't go away. There's always some kind of a remnant, a haunting of it. So they may think that they get away with it, but they don't. All right, I want to move on to some bizarre creatures. Now, before I do that, as we're into the Halloween season, I want to tell you about a show I used to listen to on the radio when I was a kid. It was called Mystery Theater, CBS Radio Mystery Theater. You could go online, and what they have are all of these radio shows that were about hauntings and paranormal stories, and it's all audio. It's not a movie. It's a radio show, and they're all there for free. And if you feel like some little story for a party or just to listen to, it's out there. And I also have a link to that on my Facebooks and blog. All right, let's go on and move on. Well, hang on a second. Let's take a quick little break, and then we're going to move on to bizarre creatures. Okay, we're back. All right. Let's talk about the Mothman. Okay, the Mothman is supposed to be this giant man-like creature that has wings. And he was first seen in West Virginia in 1966 from a period of about a little bit over a year, November 15th, 1966 to December 15th, 1967. And he would terrorize the inhabitants of that area. There was a very famous book and a movie made about it, but there are a lot of eyewitness accounts of this creature from the 1960s. And like I said, that one was in Point Pleasant, the Point Pleasant area of West Virginia. And this thing, it was a large bird-like man with red eyes. And it would fly over the cars and just follow people, couples driving through, and it would show up on this bridge and show up in people's front yards. And the big thing is it was on this one bridge that eventually collapsed. A lot of people were killed. And after that bridge collapsed, the Mothman wasn't seen anymore. So the question is, was this Mothman trying to warn people, or did Mothman make the bridge collapse? We don't know. I think a lot of people tend to believe it was an omen. The Silver Bridge. Yeah, it was the Silver Bridge that collapsed, and I think that was right around Christmas that it happened. Yeah, so people really don't know why the Mothman showed up. All they know is he was associated with this terrible bridge collapse, and they don't know if he was warning people or if it was an omen or what. I haven't heard too much about any more sightings of the Mothman. Okay, Chupacabra. That's another one that keeps coming up about this glowing red-eyed dog-like creature that has fangs and sucks the blood out of animals. And that tends to happen down in the warmer areas and on some of these Caribbean islands. And they find these poor little animals with all the blood missing and puncture wounds in the throat. And people see these little chupacabras. And some have found these strange creatures. They look like a cross between, to me, it looks like a cross between a wild boar and a dog. Like they're hairless and they're creepy looking. And some people think maybe it's some kind of a genetic experiment that escaped. There was a story about in the World War II that the Americans were releasing these little animals into the jungles to attack the Japanese soldiers, and the Japanese soldiers were afraid of it. And you kind of wonder, with everything I've read, and they all say, oh, that's conspiracy, and then you find out years later it was true. You never know, and the stuff that they've released to the public as far as technological advances, they've had this stuff for a long time, and only years later do they let the public know the truth. Okay, so we don't know what that is. That one's still a mystery. There are some people thinking they are finding some of these creatures, but no one knows for sure. Now, the werewolf is supposed to be a man that turns into a wolf during the full moon and attacks and eats people. What I find interesting about that also goes back to ancient Egypt, but the wolf is a very popular symbol or power animal to a lot of cultures. And they're somewhat noble creatures. I mean, they have alpha and female and male, and they have a pack, and they have rules, and they're wild and they're hunters. So, but a lot of people would take on the image of the wolf to be a good warrior, or to be a good survivor in the wilderness. Now, combining this with a man, and there was another story, too, in ancient Greece. Oh, I can't remember. I think it could have been Lycurgus, or one of these guys fed human meat to Zeus and the other gods and goddesses as a prank, and he was cursed to become a werewolf by Zeus. And that all of his children would become a werewolf because of what he did. And I find that interesting because there is a physical condition known as Lycaon. That's who it was, Lycaon. Lycaon, if I pronounced that right. Yeah, he was the king of Arcadia. And, and he served Zeus of his slaughtered and dismembered son in order to see whether Zeus was truly omniscient. And that's when Zeus transformed Lycaon into the form of a wolf, and he killed Lycaon's 50 sons by lightning bolts, except possibly Lyctimus, who was the slaughtered child, and the sword became restored to life, according to Wikipedia here. This is symbolic, and here is your example of a werewolf in Greek mythology, but there's a medical condition, werewolf syndrome, where hair grows all over the person's face and body, and they look like a werewolf. So there is an actual physical condition, and you wonder if somebody was afflicted with this, and then they came up with the story about what they did and, gave a reason for why they had this genetic affliction with this mythology. But that those genes are kind of spread out across the globe. There's different, I've heard of some Indian people in India that have this syndrome, and these Mexican brothers, they have it, and some other people. But that is a real thing. So I can imagine if you have that condition in ancient times and you're driven out of society into the woods, where's the only place you can hide, you will be a wild person. But you're still human with just this genetic deformity. Now, the vampire is supposed to be the undead human who feeds on blood and feeds on the living and can't be out in the sun and can infect other people through their vampire bite. Again, there is a medical condition that there are some people who have a condition where their skin starts to peel away and when they're in the sun. And they're very sensitive to the sun. And they haven't really figured out what causes that, but you have to wonder if that, combined with what I've been telling you guys about, cannibalism being a common thing in the ancient past, and somebody like this, who might have this condition and can only come out at night and is also driven from society, what do they become like? So that may have some basis in a genetic anomaly as well. Okay. The humanzi is supposed to, is another creature, and there's actually pictures of the humanzi online, but it looks like it's a chimpanzee that has no hair, and it looks like it's a combination of a human and a chimp. And this thing actually existed, and it tended to feel more affection and affiliation to humans than it did to other chimps. And allegedly, I think it wanted to mate with a human woman, but obviously that didn't happen. So they were trying to do some genetic tests on this humanzi, but I don't think that anything came forth on exactly what it was. It was a male humanzi. And if you know anything about the science of genetics, the chromosome count usually determines the species. And science claims that different species generally cannot produce a viable offspring if, they are different species, have different chromosome counts. Now, humans have 46 chromosomes and the apes have 48. So something is off, especially with, evolution that claims that we're part of this ape family when we only have 46 chromosomes and all of the apes have 48. That would be your chimp, your bonobo, your orangutan, and your gorilla, all have 48. What's interesting to me, too, is Down syndrome. They have 47 because they have an extra one. But there's people, too, that have 48. There's genetic anomalies there, but usually that could be like trisomy X, or that could be like Klinefelters. They have extra gender chromosome, but those are anomalies, and they usually have a lot of health problems. So 46 is the norm for humans, and 48 is the norm for apes. And by the way, an ape does not have a tail, and a monkey has a tail. That's the difference between an ape and a monkey. And other things, but that's one of the main ones. Okay, so this humanzi, supposedly, they were doing these genetic tests, but really nothing has come out that definitely said what was going on. But what's interesting is this idea of mating humans with apes is something that's been floating around with the psychopath scientists out there. There was a Russian guy named Ivanov, and he wanted to create, in 1910, a human-ape hybrid army for Russia. Now, that's disgusting. Okay, so he was talking about fertilizing these female chimps with man's sperm. And then they were going to create a super ape army. I mean, and then they ran this guy off, but he was actually doing experiments with it. He left Africa in the 1920s with 13 chimps, and 3 were used in his experiments. And allegedly, 2 of the chimps had failed to become pregnant, and the third died in France. Was also not pregnant. Well, that's what they tell you on Wikipedia. Who knows? These people are weird. Now, there's also an Italian nut that's talking about doing the same thing, except he wants to breed these humanzees for their organs. Okay, I don't know. It's Dr. Moreau's island here, you know. If you go back into some of the mythologies, the Minotaur, it was supposed to have been a hybrid between King Minos' wife, Pashepi, and a bull. What happened was this white bull came into Crete, and King Minos is the son of, I believe, Europa and Zeus, and also the father of Ariadne. But he found this white bull, and he was supposed to. It was Poseidon's, and he was supposed to sacrifice it, and he did not. And Poseidon cursed his wife and made her fall in love sexually, I guess, with this bull, and she convinced their master engineer, Daedalus, to make this fake bull that she would crawl in and have relations with this animal. And then she got pregnant and gave birth to the Minotaur, which was a man and a bull combination. And this Minotaur was put in the labyrinth. And because of death of another one of King Minos' sons from the Athenians, they went to war and demanded certain, like I think it was 7 kids and 7 girls and 7 boys, to be sent to King Minos because he won, to be sent into this labyrinth and be killed and eaten by this Minotaur. And eventually that was stopped by Theseus. And I've gone into some previous shows about Ariadne, Theseus, and Dionysus and all of that. But the idea that that this happened, or this woman actually conceived a child from a bull, I don't know. I mean, maybe the kid was born with some kind of deformity, and it wasn't from the bull, but they blamed it on it. And he could have even had Down syndrome for all we know. And I'm not cutting any kids down, so don't scream at me or anything. We don't know. I'm just thinking of things. And they hid him in this labyrinth and taught him, maybe they gave him a head of a bull to wear, and he would club to death, because they always show the Minotaur with a club. These children coming in from Athens, and then eat them or just kill them or whatever. But like I said, he was eventually killed by Theseus. But here again is the story of humans and animals making creatures, just like the centaur, which is a horseman, or what are some of the other ones here? Mermaids, mermen, combination of fish and humans. So there's a definite history and mythology of these hybrids, and the other big one in mythology. Well, that's it for the hybrids. Let's move on to some of the creatures. But definitely there were a lot of creatures in mythology that would be killed because they were threats to humans, or left alone. But one of them was the thunderbird, and that's more Native American. The equivalent to me would be like a harpy in Greek mythology, or a flying dragon in European, all of the Celtic and Nordic, even Chinese mythologies. That would these giant birds would come and take humans or animals, and those sound like ancient pterodactyls. I mean, they have the bones of those giant birds, and there's even stories that there was an attack on a kid in Alton, Illinois in the 1960s by one of these giant birds, but it couldn't lift him off the ground. He was about 60 pounds. Now, I've seen some pictures from like the 20th century where they would, I mean, they're obscure pictures on the internet. Who knows where they came from, but they have like a picture of one of these giant birds, not with the bone, but still with the feathers on, and somebody's standing next to it, and they have it hanging on a wall or whatever. Who knows what that was? Where did they find it? What was left, 150 years ago and killed off and kept quiet? We don't know. We know for a fact that these giant birds existed. When did they completely die out? We don't know for sure. But that flying dragons, flying thunderbirds, giant birds, harpies, that is just predominant in every, mythology. It's global. All right, shapeshifters. That's another one. Some of this could be associated with astral projection. Some of it could be associated with drugs that were slipped to people, so they were imagining things. But there's a lot of Native American stories about these shapeshifters, where they could pretend that they were some animal or something else, and a lot of them could be associated with powerful sorcerers. That, to me, goes back to an astral plane projection. And they weren't, there for your benefit, put it that way. So that was a dangerous type of being. The lizard men. Okay, here we go. There's a lot of to-do about these reptoids. Well, here's what I find interesting. We have all these dinosaur bones, and we're shown, since we're kids, that they're hairless reptiles, and they laid eggs. It's just like a reptile. And they actually have some fossilized eggs. So that's how they know that these things were kind of reptilian. But they also have birds. Archaeopteryx, I think, is one of them, which is like in between a reptoid and a feathered bird. So now there's this to-do about how the birds are the remainder of the dinosaurs. Well, I don't know. Maybe they're their own thing, like these pterodactyls and thunderbirds. Who knows? But the lizard man, bipedal reptilian being. Well, if you're reptilian, you're cold-blooded. Means you don't produce your own heat. So these things have to be in warm areas, and supposedly they're under the ground or in the inner earth. Who knows? There's a lot of talk in Hinduism of these lizard people, dragons. But a lot of these dragons, to me, are just crocodiles, and alligators or pterodactyls if they're flying, or snakes. But this lizard man is supposed to be a bipedal humanoid creature. And it's, supposedly they have their own group living under the ground. And I don't know. I have to really dig into this a little bit more, and my feelings on this kind of go back and forth. The fact that we have a fossil record of reptilian creatures cannot be disputed. I mean, that's just a fact. So, a human is a mammal, which is a warm-blooded creature. We can survive in various environments, and we have a brain enough to modify the environment as we need it to survive. But the reptilian has to be in a warm area to survive. That's why you don't have alligators and crocodiles other than a zoo in places, in the nature area where it snows all the time. Thank God, okay? So, who knows if some kind of a remnant of a reptilian that was bipedal is still, left on the earth from the ancient past. I mean, it's possible. Maybe how advanced they got, who knows? I mean, America, look how far we've come in about 200 years scientifically. Imagine if you had thousands of years of, being the top dog on the planet, where you could go. So I kind of go back and forth on that. But there are a lot of stories. Even the Cherokee have the story of a lizard man. But a lot of stories of that. And supposedly there's a lot of them out by Mount Shasta in California. Bigfoot. That one will never go away. It's supposed to be a giant, hairy, man-like creature living out in the woods. They do occasionally get hair and DNA samples, but nothing ever seems to stick. I think there was some lab just recently finding some DNA evidence on this in the woods and analyzing it, but then there's nothing else that came out from it. But I could definitely see it. I mean, it's probably another great ape. There's, but even, I guess in anthropology they have something called Gigantopithecus, which was a giant ape, much bigger, with a huge jaw. And they found some of this stuff, these jaw bones, out in China, and I think it was called Zucaria, in some caves. And you can't dispute the fact that the fact is they found this fossilized anthropological evidence. Okay, so there was something that had a jaw that big. Was it a giant human? Maybe. Was it a hairy Bigfoot? Maybe. All they have is a jawbone. And the teeth can also help tell if it was an ape or man, because there are differences between the human teeth and like a great ape's teeth. Definitely, it's more, canines are bigger on the ape and whatever, but it looks more human when you look at these giant jawbones from this Gigantopithecus specimen that they found. So that could be either a giant human or a giant Bigfoot. But again, a lot of that stuff gets buried, and you hear a little snippet here and there, but nobody will ever tend to examine that from start to finish. But that's out there. Okay, New Jersey Devil is supposed to be, I don't know, some kind of a creature that goes along very similarly to the Jane Addams Hull House type story on that one. It's supposed to haunt the woods out there. Now, the phoenix is an interesting creature, and we hear so much about that, and that symbolism is pretty much everywhere. And the phoenix is it's supposed to be a rare bird that after its life is over, typically every 500 years, creates another nest, lays an egg, and sets itself on fire to sacrifice itself for the next phoenix. Well, this phoenix symbolism goes back to Zeus or Odin and the many names that I've told you are about this one man who lived a long time ago. When my book comes out, the Crow-Night Chronicles, I'm going to show you in the Nordic writings that, as I said, Zeus, who was Odin, participated in his last battle, Ragnarok, and in the end he was killed and he was cremated with all of his belongings. So he is the phoenix. And that symbolism is all over the music industry, and is all over your corporate logos, and it's all over the movie industry. Again, Jupiter Sabazius, same dude. Okay, the griffin is supposed to be a lion with wings. Kind of reminds me of a sphinx, guardian. I don't know if there ever was a lion with wings, but that's probably more symbolic. That probably goes back to Osiris and Isis and Zeus, that line. Harpies, like I've already said before, probably some version of a thunderbird-type pterodactyl over in Europe. Sea serpents. Okay, Loch Ness Monster is famous, but so is Ogopongo, who's supposed to be out in Canada. Those are supposed to be giant, leftover, type sea monsters from ancient days, and there probably are some of those left over. They've been cited over and over. Okay, and as I said, dragons generally it can refer to crocodiles and alligators, probably some of these sea serpents, sea dragon. And then there's the flying dragon, which would have been those thunderbirds and pterodactyls. The giants, I've talked in previous shows. Obviously, there's genetic anomalies today that we do have giants that are people who are over 8 feet tall. There's a famous Illinois guy, I think Wadwell, and it was his name. He was over 8 feet tall. And they exist. They exist today. And for all we know, Robert Wadlow was the Alton giant. He lived from 1918 to 1940. They don't live too long. They have a lot of health problems. The guy was almost 9 feet tall. He was 8 feet, 11.1 inches. He was like an inch short from being 9 foot tall. I mean, they got the picture all over the internet. So you cannot deny the existence of giants, because we have the existence of giants and the existence of little people today. And, they exist in the past, they exist now, and they'll exist in the future unless we do something major to our genetic, code. So in the past, I can imagine that being this big probably gave you an advantage, and you mated the most. So your genes got passed on, and then they had tribes of giants who went out and got women, mated, and passed their genes on, because being taller and probably stronger, they could beat the crap out of the average human. So until the humans started to the average human would create tools to take them down. So you cannot deny the existence of giants. They're here. So definitely they probably, existed in the past. Little people, we've got dwarfs and midgets, or whatever you want to call them. I prefer calling them little people. And that is a genetic anomaly, and they exist today, and they probably existed in the past as well. And being, small too, they were probably kicked out of regular society. Although there's an Egyptian god, little person god called Bes. Very interesting. And that god was the god who protected children and women. So in Egypt, that little person was a god. So they respected that. But if you go into some of the history, in England, it was just disgusting what they would do to these little people. They didn't have any rights. The royalty would claim them as their property and parade them around. And, growing up in that kind of environment, I can imagine if you were, the person that had that anomaly, you would have to run away from society and be with your own to escape being kidnapped and taken as property. So England and Ireland, especially Ireland, is ripe with the stories of the little people. And the little people had their own little areas, and they lived and did, made things. They were smiths and everything. So, and their gold, they wanted the metals to make things and have a nice life. So I could definitely see the existence of these little people as just people that had to get away from being kidnapped and paraded around by some of the people in that area. And in the Americas and in Hawaii has stories of the Menehuna, which were little people, and they have stories of giants as well, but they were their own group as well. And they were said to have built a lot of some of the waterways and move them so that they were advantageous for crops and everything. But they have stories, and in the Americas there are stories of little people too, and that they had their own tribes and had weapons and whatever they needed to defend themselves, but they lived apart from the average person. So anybody that, today, giants and little people exist. Really, stop denying that they existed in the past, because you're wasting everybody's time. Now, there's also some stories of these giants that had double rows of teeth and 6 digits. Generally, when those skeletons are found, they just tend to disappear. I find that interesting. And there are a ton of these stories in the Midwest in the 1800s in the newspaper articles about these kind of giant bones with double rows of teeth and 6 fingers being found when they would open up the mounds. And all those, either they crumbled it to dust when the air hit them, or they got transferred to some museum, and they're gone now. Surprise, surprise. They don't want you to get a hold of their DNA and reproduce it. That's what it is. Now, there's also the Patagonia giants down in South America. The Spanish talked about actually meeting them. And they were just kind of living their life, and they would just, they want to be left alone. But they were actually, existing in the 1800s and, illustrated and described by these Spanish explorers in the jungles of South America. And I'm sure, they probably still exist, but they've had to move to more remote areas to be left alone. So they were supposed to have, I think they had the 6 fingers as well, but they were giants. Yeah, so definitely, actually they were written about in the 1500s, I'm sorry, but South America. And yeah, they probably still exist, and they have to hide so they can be left alone. And lastly, I'm going to talk about these aliens. Okay. We are just so inundated with this gray alien thing and now this reptoid thing. This all started in the 1940s after the atomic nuclear bomb experiments out in the West and at Rockwell, and the supposed crash of this alien ship and retrieval of these bodies. Well, here's my thoughts. I look in the past, and I did a show on crop circles before, and everybody attributes these crop circles to these aliens. And there was even a crop circle that had a picture of this gray alien and this disc that was a coded language that said believe. But in that show, I was saying all of the crop circles in the past were very simplistic. And now we have directed energy weaponry, which could easily do this stuff. And I've seen shows where the crops have been examined, and it looks as if they've been microwaved, like the water's gone, and that's what's bending them. So I don't believe the aliens are creating the crop circles. I believe companies that are making these directed energy devices are creating the crop circles. Now, as far as this Roswell incident, not Rockwell, Roswell, I don't know. I know they printed something up in the newspaper, but it wouldn't be the first time that our, governments lie about things to cover. And with all of the things going on in the 20th century where these kooky doctors were trying to create human hybrids with animals, we don't know what these people are doing. For all you know, and I know, these little gray aliens could be a genetic experiment that was created in the 20th century. And they're doing what they've been told. Hitler was supposed to be trying to create these UFOs, and he had this, I think it was the Brothers of the Bell or something, but they were trying to really work. Well, what they did was they went into India and they were looking at all these ancient Hindu texts about ancient flying vimanas, and they were trying to reproduce it. If you look at some of these Nazi ships or whatever, they resemble the Vedas and some of these designs in these Hindu temples, and or what was written about in the Vedas, and after World War II, I mean, America took over all of these Nazi scientists and created the space program. I think was it Werner von Braun, right? Isn't he the one that they brought over? Let me just check. I don't want to say if I'm wrong. But it was the Nazis that they used. Now, yeah, he was a German. Okay. They used them to create the space program because they had the knowledge. Yeah, Werner von Braun, a German, later naturalized, American rocket scientist. And he was one of the leading figures in the development of rocket technology in Nazi Germany during World War II. And subsequently in the United States. He's credited as being the father of rocket science. So the Nazis created the space program. Interestingly, they named it Saturn V, and Saturn is Kronos. Did you catch that? And now, they code all of their NASA, symbols with mythological symbolism and the names of the ancient gods. The Apollo rockets, Ares, Mars, and, on and on and on. But supposedly, these Nazis were not only going into the Hindu Vedas, but they were trying to get these women to channel these entities to get information. And to a certain point, the women got information, but once the Nazis kind of went to a certain direction, these entities didn't want to deal anymore with them and quit giving them information. So we don't know what the heck certain groups are doing in underground bases. And when you see all of these genetic experiments going on, and this, they could grow a human ear on the back of a mouse now. I mean, they make fish that glow. They make monkeys that glow, dogs that glow, pigs that glow, because they combine these genes from glowing fish with that animal. Who knows what they've done and what this gray alien thing is? Because I don't see anything in the ancient mythology about these gray aliens. The only thing they talk about is succubus and incubus, which were spirits that would come and have relations with somebody when they were sleeping. And I'm like, yeah, right, okay. Some of that was just in your dreams, so to say, but that could also be, like people messing around with things they shouldn't have been messing around with, and these entities that have no bodies come around and do things. But I have not found anything about these grays. I have found a lot of serpent imagery, and I've actually found some stories of these reptilian beings in some of these ancient, like the Hinduism and the Native American stories. But and even we'll get into Gorgons and Amazons later. Those were just women warriors. They didn't have a body of a serpent. That's a lie. But basically, I tend to see the reptilian and the Hindu and Native American, but nothing of the gray. And that, to me, that's all from the 20th century. And I kind of tend to think that those are genetic hybrids, if anything at all. And somebody's playing games here. So that's it for my discussion on strange creatures. That's it for my Halloween show. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I haven't said too many things that are just out there, but I do try and keep an open mind and think, try and explain these things and look at ancient mythology to see how long these phenomenons have been mentioned in the human record, to try and get an understanding of what is really going on. Because I don't anything newer. I would tend to say some corporation or some crazy psychopath scientist is playing around. I'd have to see some kind of ancient writing that talks about these creatures to believe they exist. But anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the show today. The next show I do will probably be on the Cronide Chronicles, and that's going to be a good one. Check out my blogs, my Facebook, my YouTube videos, so you can catch a lot of things. And until next time we meet, take care.